Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into,
Ooh, fun.
into the world of generative AI.
Okay.
But not just the surface level stuff, you know. We're really going beyond the hype to figure out how much we should actually trust these powerful tools.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
You're probably thinking Gen AI is changing everything, so how do I avoid getting swept away?
Right.
And it's a good question. And we have a stack of cutting-edge research from experts at Microsoft and beyond to help us navigate these uncharted waters.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it's all published this year, so, we're getting the most up-to-date insights.
Excellent.
This isn't just about whether the AI gets the answer right or wrong.
Right.
It's about a whole new way of thinking about reliance, especially when Gen AI can be so unpredictable.
Yeah, it really can. And that's the thing. The same question can lead to different answers each time with these models.
Really?
And it's not just inconsistency. We're seeing them backtrack on correct answers when questioned.
So if I ask it to double-check, it might actually change a right answer to a wrong one.
It can.
That's kind of unnerving. What's going on there?
What's fascinating is that GenAI can be swayed by subtle cues in your prompts, almost like it's reading between the lines.
Wow.
Your tone of voice, how confident you sound, even your perceived education level can all influence the output.
So it's not just what I ask, it's how I ask it.
Yeah.
That makes me think about how we interact with people. We adjust our communication based on who we're talking to. Is Gen AI picking up on those same social cues?
It seems that way. And this is precisely why understanding appropriate reliance is so crucial. Blindly trusting GenAI can lead to bad decisions, ineffective oversight, and even abandoning useful tools out of frustration.
Oh, yeah, I can see that happening. So, okay, appropriate reliance, let's break that down. It's not just about whether the AI spits out the right answer, is it?
No, it's not.
Hmm.
We need to move beyond that outcome-based thinking and adopt what researchers call a strategy-graded approach. It's about recognizing that even imperfect outputs can be valuable.
Can you give me an example? How could a wrong answer actually be useful?
Think about brainstorming with GenAI for a marketing campaign. Even if some suggestions are way off base, they could spark a new line of thinking that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. It's like using the AI as a creative springboard rather than a source of absolute truth.
So it's about using the AI to push our own thinking further, even if it's not always accurate in the traditional sense.
Exactly. And to do that well, we need to understand the two components of appropriate reliance, CARE and CSR. CARE stands for correct AI reliance. That's when you trust the AI and it's actually right.
Okay, so that sounds like the ideal scenario, but I'm guessing it's not always that simple.
Yeah.
What about when the AI is wrong?
That's where CSR comes in.
Yeah.
Correct self-reliance. It's about having the confidence to trust your own judgment even when the AI is giving you a different answer.
So it's not about blindly following the AI, it's about knowing when to trust it and when to trust ourselves. This sounds like it could get pretty complicated, especially with all the factors that influence how we interact with these systems.
You're right. A lot depends on your level of expertise in a given field. Novices might need more support from AI, while experts might be better at spotting inconsistencies or inaccuracies.
That makes sense. If you're already familiar with a topic, you're more likely to notice when the AI is straying from the facts. So expertise plays a big role. What about the type of interaction we have with the AI? Does that matter?
It absolutely does. Research suggests that multi-turn conversations where you can go back and forth with the AI can help you develop a more appropriate level of reliance.
So it's like probing and questioning the AI instead of just accepting the first answer it gives you, almost like having a dialogue to figure out its reasoning.
That's a great way to put it. And this back and forth can help you uncover inconsistencies or biases you might have missed otherwise.
That's a really interesting point. It's like we're using conversation to calibrate our trust in the AI. So we've talked about expertise and the style of interaction, but what about the task itself? Does appropriate reliance change depending on what we're using Gen AI for?
Definitely. Over-reliance looks different when you're using GenAI for coding versus something like creative writing, for example.
Okay, I can see how those are very different contexts. Give me an example of how over-reliance might play out in each case.
Let's say you're using GenAI to help you write code. You might be tempted to just accept its suggestions without fully understanding what the code actually does. This could lead to errors that you don't even realize are there, which could have big consequences down the line.
Yikes, that's a bit scary. Especially if you're working on a critical piece of software. It sounds like over-reliance in coding could be about blindly accepting the AI's output without truly understanding it. What about in a creative context?
If you're using GenAI for creative writing, Over-reliance might look like clinging too tightly to the AI's initial output and not allowing yourself to explore your own ideas. It could stifle your creativity and lead to a piece that feels generic or uninspired.
So in that case, over-reliance is less about factual accuracy and more about letting the AI dictate your creative choices.
Exactly. It all boils down to this appropriate reliance is context dependent. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
It sounds like there's a lot to consider when we're navigating the world of Gen AI.
There is. But don't worry, researchers are already developing strategies to help us use these tools more effectively and avoid the pitfalls of over-reliance. And that's what we'll be diving into next.
So we've established that appropriate reliance is key. But how do we actually achieve that? It sounds like researchers are working on some interesting strategies to help us out.
They are. One promising area focuses on using explanations to help us understand how GenAI arrives at its outputs.
So instead of just getting an answer, we get a peek behind the curtain to see the AI's thought process.
Exactly. And there are different types of explanations that can be helpful. For example, verification-focused explanations help us assess whether the output is actually correct.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do those work?
One way is through AI self-critiques. Imagine the AI generating a summary of a long document and then providing a separate critique, pointing out potential flaws or inconsistencies in its own work.
So it's like the AI is saying, hey, I might have messed up here, take a closer look.
It is.
That's amazing. It's like having a built-in fact checker.
And research shows that these self-critiques can be incredibly effective.
Sure.
In one study, users who had access to AI self-critiques were able to find 50% more errors in summaries.
Wow, that's a significant improvement. It sounds like AI self-critiques could be a game changer for anyone who relies on AI for tasks like summarizing documents or analyzing data. How do you think people could implement this in their own workflows?
It's surprisingly simple. You can actually prompt the AI to engage in self-critique. For example, after it generates a summary, you could ask, what are the potential weaknesses of this summary? Or what are some alternative viewpoints that I should consider?
That's a great tip. I'm definitely going to try that. Are there other types of verification-focused explanations we should know about?
Another helpful one is contrastive explanations. These provide evidence both for and against the AI's claim, so you're getting both sides of the story, so to speak.
That sounds really useful for situations where the information is ambiguous or there's a lot of uncertainty. It forces you to think critically and not just take the AI's word as gospel.
Exactly. It helps you weigh the evidence and make a more informed decision about whether to trust the AI's output. But keep in mind, even with explanations, we need to be cautious. Research has shown that we can be persuaded by explanations, even when they contain contradictions or fabrications.
So even explanations can be misleading. It sounds like we can't just turn off our critical thinking skills and completely rely on these explanations.
Right. It's important to remember that explanations are just another tool to help us navigate the complexities of GenAI. They shouldn't be seen as a substitute for our own judgment and critical thinking.
That makes sense. We still need to be active participants in the process, even when we're using these helpful tools. So verification-focused explanations are all about checking the AI's work. What about other types of explanations? Are there explanations that help us understand the AI better?
Absolutely. Background explanations can be incredibly valuable. These provide additional context that's relevant to the AI's output, but might not be part of its training data.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Can you give me an example of how that might work?
Let's say you're using GenAI to research a historical event. The AI might present information that seems inaccurate or incomplete. A background explanation could fill in those gaps by providing historical context or highlighting different perspectives on the event.
So it's like the AI is giving us a crash course in the relevant background information so we can better evaluate its claims.
Exactly. Background explanations can help us spot inconsistencies and understand why the AI might have arrived at a particular conclusion, even if it's not entirely accurate. They can also help us identify potential biases in the AI's training data.
That's incredibly valuable, especially given the concerns about bias in AI systems. It sounds like explanations are a really powerful tool for promoting appropriate reliance. But what about the AI itself? Can it be designed to be more transparent about its own confidence level?
That's a great question. Researchers are exploring the use of uncertainty expressions, which are ways for the AI to communicate how sure it is about its output.
So instead of just giving us an answer, it would also tell us how much we should trust that answer. That seems like a crucial piece of information. How would that work in practice?
There are several approaches. One is to use visual cues, like highlighting words or phrases in the AI's output, that have a low probability of being correct.
So it's like a warning system, visually flagging areas where the AI might be less certain.
Precisely. This could be really helpful for tasks like writing or editing, where you need to pay close attention to the details. And for coders, those visual cues could be invaluable in preventing errors.
That makes a lot of sense. What about using language to express uncertainty? Could the AI actually tell us when it's not sure about something?
That's another promising area. AI models can be trained to use phrases like, "I'm not sure about this," or "I need more information," when they're less confident in their outputs.
It's like the AI is admitting that it doesn't have all the answers. That feels much more human and relatable than an AI that always pretends to be certain.
It does, doesn't it? And research suggests that these first-person expressions of uncertainty can actually help reduce over-reliance. When the AI acknowledges its own limitations, we're less likely to blindly accept its outputs.
That's encouraging. It seems like we're making progress in finding ways to build more trustworthy AI systems. So we've got explanations and uncertainty expressions. Are there any other strategies in the toolkit for promoting appropriate reliance?
There are. Another fascinating area of research focuses on what are called cognitive forcing functions.
Okay, I love that analogy. It's like the AI is helping us to pump the brakes on our own assumptions and biases.
Yeah.
How do these cognitive forcing functions work?
One way is by using the AI to generate questions that challenge our assumptions. For example, let's say you're researching investment strategies, and the AI confidently claims that tech stocks always yield the highest returns. A well-placed question could disrupt that assumption, prompting you to think more deeply about the complexities of the market.
That's a great example. It's like the AI is playing devil's advocate, forcing us to consider alternative perspectives. So instead of passively accepting the AI's initial statement, we're engaging in a more critical analysis.
Precisely. And this type of questioning can help us break free from confirmation bias and make more informed decisions.
So explanations, uncertainty expressions, and cognitive forcing functions. It sounds like we've got a pretty robust toolkit for navigating the world of GenAI and avoiding over-reliance. But are these strategies always effective? Are there any potential downsides we should be aware of?
That's a great question. And it leads us to a very important discussion about the design of these systems. Well, some strategies can backfire if they're not designed carefully,
Okay.
like self-critiques. While they can be helpful in catching errors, they might also make us less confident in the AI overall.
Yeah, I can see that.
If we see it constantly pointing out its own flaws, we might start to wonder if it's even worth trusting at all.
Yeah, it's like that friend who's always second-guessing themselves. You start to wonder if they even believe in their own abilities. So too much self-critique could actually erode our trust in the AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then with cognitive forcing functions, sometimes they can lead to under-reliance.
Oh, interesting.
If we're constantly being bombarded with questions or forced to slow down our thinking, we might get frustrated and just give up on using the AI altogether.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like finding that right balance is key. We don't want to blindly trust the AI, but we also don't want to completely dismiss its potential value. So how do we strike that balance? What can developers do to design GenAI systems that encourage appropriate reliance?
That's where the research on design principles for GenAI comes in. One of the most important guidelines is to build transparency directly into the system.
Okay, what does that look like in practice? How can we make these systems more transparent?
It can be as simple as providing clear explanations of how the system works, what its strengths and limitations are, and what types of tasks it's best suited for. Think of it like an instruction manual for GenAI, but one that people will actually read.
No, that's a good way to think about it. So it's about giving users the information they need to make informed decisions about how and when to use the AI. What about those different types of explanations we discussed earlier? How can developers integrate those effectively?
Providing the right type of explanation at the right time can make a big difference. Global explanations, which give an overview of how the AI works, are great for building general understanding. Background explanations can help users fact-check the AI's outputs and understand its reasoning process. And verification-focused explanations, like self-critiques, can help users identify potential errors.
So it's about offering a variety of explanations to support different user needs and different stages of interaction with the AI. What about uncertainty expressions? How can developers implement those effectively?
We've talked about visual cues, like highlighting uncertain words or phrases, and linguistic cues, like using phrases that express doubt. The key is to be clear and consistent in how uncertainty is communicated. Don't make users guess what the AI means.
Right, and it's important to emphasize that AI confidence doesn't always equal correctness, right? Even if the AI sounds very sure of itself, It doesn't mean it's always right.
Precisely. We need to train users to be critical consumers of AI-generated information, even when it's presented with a high degree of confidence.
Any design tips for incorporating those cognitive forcing functions?
Encouraging multi-turn conversations with the AI can be very effective. This allows users to probe the AI's reasoning, ask follow-up questions, and get a better sense of how much they should trust its outputs.
So it's about shifting from a one-sided interaction to a more dynamic exchange where the user is actively involved in evaluating the information.
You're right. And developers can design the AI to generate those challenging questions that prompt users to think more critically.
It sounds like designing for appropriate reliance is a multifaceted challenge. But these research-based guidelines offer a roadmap for creating Gen AI systems that are more transparent, trustworthy, and ultimately more beneficial for everyone.
I agree. The future of Gen AI depends on our ability to use these tools responsibly and thoughtfully.
So what does this all mean for you, our listeners? You don't need to fear Gen AI or treat it like a magic oracle. It's a powerful tool that requires thoughtful use and a healthy dose of skepticism. Think of it as a partner in problem solving and decision making, not a replacement for your own critical thinking skills.
That's a great way to put it. Understand its strengths, be aware of its limitations, and don't be afraid to question its outputs.
Excellent advice. Now, here's a final thought to ponder as you navigate the evolving world of Gen AI. We've learned that AI can be influenced by subtle cues in our prompts. So could we intentionally craft prompts to steer the AI towards more desirable outputs? For example, if the AI tends to be more accurate when users sound confident, could we use that to our advantage by always phrasing our questions in a highly assertive manner? That's something to experiment with and see what you discover. Let us know what you find.